Welcome back, one and all. Tonight is the night. We are back. A brand new episode of Jackson Kayak Dock Talk. New panel coming your way. Episode 31 starts. What is up, everybody? Welcome back. Doc Talk. Hope you like the intro. We keep playing that thing. You guys are probably ready for a new intro by now. As always, my name is Chad Brock, and I have assembled a brand new, kind of not new panel for tonight's episode of Doc Talk. So let's go around the room. We'll let Wyatt go first. Introduce yourself, Wyatt. Tell us where you're from.
Well, my name's Wyatt Gard. I'm from Center Point, Indiana, kind of the midwestern part of the state.
There you go. Up in the there we go. Up in the other corner, or the middle now, Mr. Blatt. Tell us a little bit about you, where you hail from, and all that fun stuff.
Oh, well, I like to say where I live. I live in New Hampshire. Unless the Saints are winning, then I tell people I was born and raised in New Orleans, but I don't want to talk about last week's game. But they're in second place in the conference at 5-7, which is pathetic. Yeah, from New Orleans, and now I live in the middle between. I live on the New Hampshire side between New Hampshire and Vermont on the Connecticut River.
You know, we're almost brothers because you guys had Drew Brees down there in New Orleans for the Saints there for the longest time. He's a Purdue boy, which Purdue,
Yes, he is.
As an Indiana guy, Purdue is near and dear to my heart. Boiler up for those that like IU. Yeah, that's where we're at. So tonight we got a new fun episode of Doc Talk. We're going to be talking about some different things. We've got these guys assembled, but tonight's topic is finding fish. Finding fish while kayak fishing is always a thing, and it's always a big question. You know, when you've got some new folks that are entering the sport, one of their first questions is, how do I find fish? So these guys and myself tonight we're gonna ring around this thing. Michael is a guide. Wyatt is a tournament fisherman. I'm a jack of all trades. So tonight we're going to talk about finding fish in your kayak and give some tips and tricks on how to help you maybe find more fish. So we're going to start with Wyatt. You're in the big panel right now. What are some of the things that you do? Let's say you've got a tournament coming up next weekend, a body of water that you've never seen before. What are some of the things that you do as an angler that fishes a tournament? How do you find those fish?
Well, first thing for me, just be looking for that familiar water, something I know how to fish, whether it's wood structure or grass or whatever I feel comfortable fishing. If it's a new body of water, I'll look for those similarities and go from there. That's my main focus as soon as I hit a place is look for something similar.
What about you, Michael? Like, what's your initial go once you have so Wyatt's a tournament angler, you're a guide. So when you start looking for fish, what are some of the first things that you're looking for in finding those fish for your clients?
You know, I like to tailor my experiences per client, so get a feel for their experience level. And if I have someone who has casted a fishing rod before, I like to go with baits that I know in the area at that time of year will get bit. Whether it's a crankbait or a chatterbait or a drop shot, it's something that I'm familiar with, that I know if I throw it right here and it doesn't get bit, there's either no fish there or they're not biting that. And so I usually go to my go-to baits, and if there's a new body of water, I'll go work it for a day, 2 days, 3 days, and I'll rarely change up lures just until I find a fish, because I know what it feels like when there's a bite, and I know what bites on certain lures. And so I like to go with something I'm comfortable with, and it's a rod and a reel combo that I know I will be able to hand off to one of my clients.
Now, Wyatt, when you start looking around at new water, how much time do you spend looking at your phone, looking at Google? I mean, what are some of the things that maybe you look for when you start kind of processing a body of water visually, to maybe find that starting spot that you know you want to kind of check out for practice for an event?
Well, for example, the Jackson Kayak Classic for the USA Basin down at Kentucky Lake, I probably spent a month and a half ahead on Google Maps, just zooming in on anything I could see that, was familiar to me, not necessarily on the lake because I'd never seen the lake before, but any similarities to home waters, just because of my being comfortable on how I like to fish, which can sometimes hurt me, but definitely, I probably should have spent more time on the water leading up to the tournament, but that time isn't always there. And any tournament angler knows that. I mean, we all have our struggles on, getting down there, wherever it may be, and spending that extra time in the water, whether it's due to work or whatever. But yeah, any map usage, topo maps, anything, they just get really studied. I mean, that's probably my biggest thing I do as far as, especially going out of state or something like that. So
Now, it's kind of a secondary question to this. You're a hunter, bow hunter, for whitetail and different things like that. How much do you feel like looking at topo maps and stuff for hunting and fishing? How much do you feel like that topographical images relate to fish movement, or do you think about that kind of stuff maybe in the same way when you're fishing versus hunting?
Oh, definitely. I mean, across fishing, hunting, and in my situation, through my work, even we make roads through the woods to get logs out. So, I mean, that's something I even study through work because you have to be able to get that stuff out efficiently. But if the terrain's too rough, I mean, you have to use the terrain as it lies. I mean, you can't change it. So, I mean, on a lake, you cannot see what's under the water, and that the topo map is just that you go to see that creek channel or that ravine that may run, hundreds of yards out into the lake with a sharp drop off or something. So that's an easy tool to use. I mean, you can find any sort of depth change or anything like that through that. So
Right on, right on. Now, Michael, you are talking about topo maps and mapping. You're a hummingbird guy, best I recall. Um, how much of the color shading, like a lot of these newer electronics and different things come out that are coming out now, on the mapping side, and Hummingbird has probably the best color coordinating for mapping, to show drop offs of different things. How much do you use that, and how does it translate every day into really keying in on, like, once you find a depth that fish are really holding in? How much does that play into your day to day?
So in the kayaks, I honestly, for a year and a half of having that Humminbird Helix 9, I don't think I turned the map on maybe once or twice just to mark a spot on my go-to places. But
Mhm.
when I got my bass boat, I I very quickly realized I didn't understand why they would put a Helix 9 at the bow where
Mhm.
you're standing all day wishing you had a bigger screen, and they put a Helix 12 in the cockpit
Right.
until you press the mapping button. And
Mhm.
on Labor Day weekend, we got invited to a friend's house on Lake Winnipesaukee, which is the largest lake in, I don't know if, I mean, Champlain is massive. Winnipesaukee is right up there. And Winnipesaukee is known for salmon, trout, and they've got some largemouth and smallmouth. But from what I know, the tournaments there, if you're not experienced with this lake, you struggle. And the morning that I was taking my wife's cousin and then my good friend Joe out, again, Labor Day weekend, you have to get out before 7 a.m. or else you are fighting 7-foot swells just from the boat traffic. So we had to get out there. Well, at 6 a.m., there was a boat in the middle of nowhere in front of their house, like maybe a half mile to a mile in the middle of Lake Winnipesaukee. And from what I know, Lake Winnipesaukee is 112, 150 feet deep in most parts in the middle. Well, very quickly, I realized when we took the boat out, that color shading, there was an underwater island right where that boat was at 6 a.m. And I was like, guys, we're going to go check that out. I want to see this. And it went from 60 feet up to about 20 feet. And then there were some 12-foot deep spots. And we dropped the drop shot down. I have never fished Lake Winnipesaukee. One cast, 3.5 pound smallmouth. Second cast, 3.5 pound smallmouth. And I hadn't even casted yet. This is my wife's cousin and my friend Joe, and the pictures spoke for themselves. And so then the waves are starting getting a little treacherous, where we had to move. And they were like, "Where should we go?" So I looked at the topo map and I said, "You know what? I think we should go here. Let's go to a little ledge. Let's go throw some chatterbaits, around some boulders." And all of a sudden we start pulling in more smallmouth from 12-foot deep, crystal clear water. That's another thing about Winnipesaukee. You can see 12 to 20 feet down in most calm spots of the lake. And so that was the first time that I ever was in a new spot, grabbed the hummingbird, grabbed the color coding, and saw success with it. And so then I said, all right, well, I wasn't getting paid for that day. Now let's transfer that to some new bodies. Now, I don't take paying clients to new bodies of water that I haven't been to yet, but this kind of helped me. The thing about going to new bodies of water, and Wyatt will attest to this, Chad, you'll attest to this, and any angler, when you go to it with confidence, when you can use a map with confidence, or Wyatt, if you look on Google Maps and say, you know what, there's a drop off there, I'm going to fish that. And you go there and 3 seconds in, you're on a fish. You're like, all right, I know how to read a map. I know how to catch a fish. It's not that we're any better at the next person in doing it. It's that we did it. We saw success, and now we have the confidence in knowing of our ability to do that. Yeah, what you're zooming in right there, Chad, that's probably one of the worst things about this lake is island after island after island, and you can't move in between all of that stuff because, it gets 3 feet deep, and all of a sudden there's a boulder the size of a house that's 6 inches under the water. Granted, they're all marked. They do a pretty good job on Lake Winnipesaukee in marking those hazards, but again, going and finding those fish was a real confidence boost in my ability to read a map.
I like it, man. How'd you like that? Pulling up the whole, you got different things going on. I like it.
Do you know the secret about Lake Winnipesaukee?
I don't. Fill us in.
So some of the greatest parts to fish there are these old rails that the Navy would put mock submarines on around World War II. And they would paint these fake submarines and test out the paint because the water was so clear. They'd lower these submarine tops down the track to a depth, and they would test to see if you could see that submarine from a plane as it slipped underwater 10 feet by 50 feet by 100 feet. And so they were testing camouflage at Lake Winnipesaukee. And that's kind of the Navy used Lake Winnipesaukee back in World War II to test submarine paint.
Yeah, that's very cool. Very cool. Now, transitions play a big part in finding fish. You know, fish have movements, fish have patterns. We've kind of talked about the topo map a little bit. When you, um, sorry, I started reading other things. When you start looking at transitions, what kind of paths are you looking for? Like from winter to spring to summer and then back to fall. What are some of the things that you guys are looking for in your fishing to find fish throughout the seasons?
Well, obviously, bait. I mean, bait fish is the key to all bass fishing. I mean, you have to have some sort of bait, whether it be a bluegill, shad, or whatever you might have in your area. But um, early spring, wherever that water's warming up quicker, is a lot of times where your bait fish is going to be. So, I
Mhm.
mean, and the same goes for the fall. I mean, you're going to have some colder water temperatures, but there's going to be times where, or certain times of the day where, especially if the sun's out or whatever, um, some shallow water might be warming up fairly quick. And if it's loaded with bait fish, you're going to have bass there. So that's something I really look for, especially in those borderline cold temperatures.
I want to share a really fun secret, especially in New England for spring fishing. When we have that transition where everybody's waiting for ice out, the boat launches, the docks haven't gone in yet, people are really starting to fish. I look for the new fishermen or the new social media fishermen
Mhm.
who haven't figured out how to blur their backgrounds yet. And they are really excited to share with people that they are catching fish before anybody else is in the springtime.
Mhm.
And man, when they take a photo and there's the hotel sign from the lake that and the mountain in the background with the interstate right there, it's
Mhm.
they haven't quite figured out how to blur that background yet. And and there's always like a local fishing page. It's like, hey, got this guy today, can't tell you where, but he was 5 pounds. um and like, and he hasn't figured out how to blur the background yet. So you're like, okay, I know where that is. I can't remember who it was. I want to say, oh man, I think it was our ice fishing episode last year, Chad. When we were talking about, you post a really good picture of a good fish from 2 weeks ago at the spot you were fishing before you moved to a new spot. And so that's kind of the cardinal rule. If you want to empty out some places to fish in spring and fall, post a photo from 2 weeks ago where it's clearly marked of where you were, and then all of like the places you want to go are now going to the places where you were. So
I think we've all had that story at that point.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna be. I've said it on here before, and I'll say it again. I'm guilty of it. If I'm going to a place and I know my practice is, and I've got to fish a tournament or do something where I need to find fish fast, or I know I've only got a day, I will pull up FishBrain app. I will pay for the subscription, the 3 day or 3 month subscription or whatever it is. I'll get on there and I'll look at all the little hot spots, the clusters of where these people have caught fish over the years. And I will use those hotspots to say, well, this area seems to have a lot of fish. Okay, it's got smallmouth. Okay, it's got largemouth. And I'll take off there on a whim, pull up my map, and kind of see the contour of the lake. And then I know kind of the area where I want to be. So I'll start scanning that until I figure out what exactly is down there. And then I can start fishing it. But it's a good cheat code, for someplace when you've only got a day and you need to like hustle up and catch something.
But you can take that information and kind of relay that to the rest of the lake. You can study the rest of the lake with that information, and you might be able to pick up a pattern that way.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that I'm going to pull something back up here. We're going to go back to the share screen, maybe. Window, boom, boom. So I pulled up a cove here. This cove, to me, if I'm looking for fish, this is kind of a textbook area, and I'm going to show you why. This cove obviously faces to the north. Everything's is moving north. The sun's hitting it from the south, through the fall, and this is kind of one of the places that I would look at traditionally if I'm looking for something. You can see here I've got some hard ledges out here in the main lake that are feeding off a creek channel, and then you've got the main drag running through here. But you've got these ledges where these fish are going to get out and kind of be, summer, winter. This is kind of going to be that spot that they hang. It's going to be out of harm's way because one thing fish do hate is a north wind or a east wind, 9 times out of 10. So you've got a really nice bank here to block them from the north wind. You've got a nice bank here that's going to block them from the east wind. They can kind of run up and down these points all summer long, feeding on bait fish, and it's quick access back here to the shallows if they need to. But you've also got all these structures back here. So you hear a lot of guys talk about secondary points as they're moving through the seasons. You've got isolated cover on all these spots, old road beds, bridges, foundations, different things that make these secondary points a great place for fish to hold. But then you've also got, if you look on Google Maps, you can zoom in right here and you've got rock. So you've got a really good hard bottom all the way back through here where fish going to get up and spawn. You've probably got some clay back up in here as you get a little further. Still showing a lot of rocks, but you can see the clay point really comes out. So you've got all those secondaries that kind of cruise back through there. And there again, you've got secondary structure for these fish to hold on all the way back up into the main creek where they might go. So it kind of gives those fish a really big travel corridor and a place to move. When they want to spawn or they're coming out from winter, they've got something to hold on in each place as they start working their way up. And if this is somebody's fishing spot, I do apologize because I just pulled off a random lake that is nowhere near me and started talking about it. But that's kind of some of the things that I look at to start finding fish, I think, out of the gate when I'm talking about mapping and the different things that go into that. Or remove that, if that makes sense to anybody. So that's kind of how I use my maps. I always, in the fall, I always try to think about the north. It's just one of those places that as the water starts to warm, if you can find like riprap, if you can find rock, anything out there that's, genuinely going to hit sun, it's going to warm up. Those rocks are going to hold heat longer in the spring. That water's going to warm up faster that way. Those are going to be kind of some of your first fish, I think, that really start to come up. Wouldn't you guys agree from what you've seen?
Well, definitely.
I had a trip. I was actually reluctant to take this trip. This guy emailed me on Halloween. He's got no kids, and this showed. He emailed on Halloween and wanted a 2-day pike fishing only trip. And he didn't want to go to Lake Champlain. He didn't want to troll for hours on end. He wanted to go to some smaller lakes in Vermont and catch trophy pike. And I was tooling around one of these lakes one day and saw a pike that must have been 35 inches, 40 inches long, in maybe 5 feet of water. Again, crystal clear water still in August and September. And it's just laying on the weeds. Like it made itself a little bed and just laid there. And that's what pike do. They just sit there. And so come November, the water is 59.22 degrees. I remember it because I was afraid because it finally went under 60. And I was just like, how am I going to get this guy his trophy pike? And I told him, I said, listen, I saw a pike laying in the sun on this end of the lake a month ago. And I think the water might have been 70 at that point, maybe 75. Right. But I said, you know what? Let's go. You never know. And we are casting in 5 to 10 feet of water, and he pulls in a 15-pound, 42-inch northern pike.
Wow.
In a 500-acre lake. And it just and you talk about, the sun hitting a north side, hitting a south side. One of my favorite things to do in the afternoon after the warm sun in the fall and the spring has warmed up the side where the fish are supposed to be is to go to the other side at least for an hour, because and the biggest fish I've ever caught in the spring has been on this side where they shouldn't have been. And it makes no sense. And, again, this is where I go into, there's electronics are great, but if you just throw out some bait, just see what happens.
Yeah, I think
there's going to be
all caught that fish. Go ahead, Wyatt.
All the fish just ain't going to be on that north side, soaking up that sun. There's fish in the lake. I mean, and it may be a pressure thing, if colder water and everybody's fishing that north side that is heating it more, those fish have been caught and seen every bait. They may just completely move out of the area and just, do things. So you have to keep your mind open, especially on pressured lakes.
Yeah, for sure. And there's always going to be that one thing, I think, in a day that's just like, it just doesn't make sense why it happened. Like, you catch that fish in that one rogue area, and it's like, that wasn't supposed to happen like that.
Never caught.
Sometimes it leads down a rabbit hole. Wouldn't you guys agree, though?
Oh yeah,
we've all chased that rabbit far and wide. Now, finding fish is one thing. We'll all agree that's 99% of the battle. Well, 50% of the battle is finding these fish. Now, once you've found them, you've kind of dialed in what they're biting on. How do you go about managing them? I know, Wyatt, you're a tournament fisherman, so you're going to be managing these fish anywhere from 1 to 2 days, or through a practice period into a tournament. How do you manage those fish to make sure that you're not, I mean, as a kayak angler, you're going to catch them and you're going to measure them and you're going to put them back, but how do you keep management on them so that if you need that spot for 2 days, they're still going to be biting when you go back the next day?
Right. I mean, if you have fished the lake before, you can kind of go off of some past history. If this a certain area holds fish and you go there to pre-fish for a 2-day tournament or whatever. Patoka Lake, for example, at the Grubby Championship, I went to the same spot I did the year prior, which it was a few weeks later. But the year prior, this place was just loaded with fish. And so I just went back there to practice. And in the 2 days of practice, I had just a couple bites. I mean, but I knew the fish were there. I mean, I just couldn't figure it out. And luckily, first day of the tournament, I figured something out and put up a decent limit. But when it comes to your practice period, I mean, we all do it a little bit different, but some guys will even go as far as cutting their hooks off. I mean, just to feel that bite. And even if you can carry that and continue getting that same bite, you pick up a little bit of a pattern, you try something different, leave those fish alone and go somewhere completely different. And that's generally what I focus on, is just picking up a few bites on a certain pattern and then completely changing it up and go to a different area and see if I can come up with a different pattern. And having that different pattern on the back burner if the first batch of fish don't cooperate. So
now, Michael, your situation is drastically different. I mean, in your busy season, I mean, I've seen you're out there almost every day. How do you manage all of these fish to make sure that that you're bringing home happy clients? Because I mean, man, shoot, some days you could be out there 6-7 days a week.
Yep. There's a couple different things. There was the week that I got the bass boat, a modest 250 horses on it. I was like, I'm unstoppable. If I'm not catching fish here, I can go to the other side of the lake in 5 seconds. And the first 3 or 4 days before I actually put clients on that boat, I would voice my frustration to my wife. I said, I'm not catching the same amount of fish from the bass boat that I am the kayak. And she looks at me and she says, well, baby, what do you do in your kayak trips? Your kayak trips, they're 4 hours. The full days are 8, but most of your trips are 4 hours. And when you go to the lake or the river, you're usually picking a direction. You're either going this way or you're going this way. It takes 45 minutes to get from the other end of the lake to another spot in the kayak. So what do? You work an area. And so what I actually ended up doing is, even on these smaller lakes, is I will take a 4-hour trip and we will go work 1, 2, maybe a third spot on that lake that I know holds fish. And then if I am back at that lake the following day, I'm doing the opposite ends of the lake that I did the day before. And just in case there's no fish on those spots, I usually, there's a lot of fishing guides who are tournament anglers or ex-tournament anglers, and you can see their social media posts. Oh, we caught 50 fish in 4 hours, and the biggest one was 4 pounds, and that's great. I'm glad that you caught 50 fish, but I really like just teaching my guests how to work a single bait to where they're comfortable casting it anywhere. I would rather them be able to cast on a dime than catch 50 fish. And so they're improving their skills. Now, again, this is case by case basis, but it's working the area of a lake in a kayak until you find that bite, or in a bass boat until you find that bite. And then, if it's at 12 feet, if it's at 20 feet, well, let's see if anything's going to hit top water in the middle of July, just off this point. And, here's this rod, top water lure. And, people think a whopper plopper is the funniest sounding thing to ever come across the top of the water. And when something actually hits it, it's really, really fun. And so it's just being respectful to the body of water and making sure that you're not catching 50 fish per trip. You're getting 1 to 2 trophy fish, maybe catching 5 to 7 per person instead of 12 to 15. And I might not be the most popular fishing guide with that kind of outlook, but it keeps the local fishermen happy that I'm not going to outfish their lakes and rivers.
Yeah.
Situation. I mean, in your situation, I mean, anybody can, well, I'm not going to say anybody because not everybody has this opportunity, but a lot of people can go to their local pond and go catch fish. They're hooking up with you and they want that quality fish. And I'm sure that's a real struggle to, use a fine tooth comb and sort through these fish and find those quality fish that you can put them on.
And I get jealous throughout the year. In the middle of July, actually, it was a group of 4 people, former client of my wife's from our former career in the wine industry, who lives in Indianapolis, 2 grandkids, 1 nephew. Hey, we go on a fishing trip every 4 years. We want to come see you. We want to fish for 3 days, full days, 8-hour days. And we had such a good day on one of these lakes. They wanted to go back. They didn't want to see a new body of water. But this one 22-year-old kid catches a 6-pound bass, and that was tied my personal best on that body of water. And he did it on a drop shot in a rainstorm. And I was jealous. I was so jealous. You got to keep your composure. The pike that this guy caught, my best pike, I think he beat my best pike on that body of water. Open water. Ice fishing is completely different, but I kept my cool. I didn't tell him. I didn't want him to know. If
Right.
he's watching this, he knows, but
Now, I'm gonna flip this back to Wyatt, and one of the things that Michael had brought up was, once he got in his boat, he had that moment where he was, had that mindset of I can run around a little bit more, and it took that kayak fishing to dial him, reflecting on kayak fishing to dial him back. As a tournament angler, we see this a lot, and I know you have to fish behind people often. How much does that actually being forced to break down a set of an area of water help you over, these guys that come in, and we see it a lot now. They'll live scope it, they'll pan it, they'll pick up the trolling motor and they're gone, or they'll hit an area real quick and then they're gone. But then you'll come through it and maybe catch a fish off where they've just been because you actually have to spend the time there. Do you believe that, maybe that's one of the blessings of kayak fishing is being forced to have to stay in an area longer?
Oh, definitely. There's been a lot of situations. It was just going to be anybody's mentality in a kayak where you're out kayak fishing, whether it's a tournament or not, and there's a big boat tournament, and in the back of your head, you're almost frustrated because you're going to be fishing, alongside or behind these boats and fishing water that's already been fished. So, I know a lot of us do it where we kind of pay attention to the boats and if they're catching fish, or especially if they're not catching fish, if they're just beating the bank up and they're not catching anything, I may come off the bank, 10, 15 feet and work that same stretch. And I mean, I've caught multiple fish that way, just fishing directly behind them. Or even if I notice they're fishing really fast, which I see a lot of boat guys do it. And I don't know how or why, but they will just blast down the bank and they're just casting left and right. And I basically just throw something just as similar as what they are, and just slowing down will produce bites. And obviously in the kayak, we can't cover nearly the amount of water a boat can, but yeah, definitely. I mean, it really amazes me how many fish I've really caught behind boats, just trailed right behind them.
For sure. Now, Michael, for you, kind of dabbling in both worlds, when you're talking about managing fish, do you ever feel like that maybe being in the kayak offers less of an impression on the water than maybe the boat has? Have you seen a difference in your areas, kayak versus boat, I guess, after you've even slowed down and started taking some of your kayaking knowledge into what you're doing?
absolutely. When you are running so on my kayak, I had a pretty big trolling motor. I had a Minn Kota Altera. It was a 24-volt system, 80 pounds of thrust. Before that, on my big tuna, I had XI3. But you look at the power that you need to run a XI3 in a kayak, or any trolling motor from a kayak, versus what you need to move a bass boat. And you can call it quiet, whatever you want, but you're using 10 times as much power to move a bass boat than you are a kayak. And so any motor is going to make twice as much noise. And if you're when you toss out a lure, a fish will sometimes come from 15 feet away to get that lure if it's going to bite. And so if I'm a fish and I'm 15 feet away from a trolling motor and it's making some noise, it's going to kind of freak me out. I'm going to be a little bit more cautious. So absolutely, it's been a completely different way of fishing. I can definitely say, in the springtime last year, trolling for trout with a small motor, I mean, we're catching trout left and right. And this fall, I went back to some of the same spots in the bass boat looking for trout. And I mean, they might have gotten all caught from the spring because they're stocked. But I feel like that bass boat is definitely scaring some fish. You know, it's on windy days, I would love to turn off the motor and just drift because I feel like I'm more in a kayak. But absolutely, I feel like it does definitely change the impression in the water. On sunny days in clear water, you are casting a massive shadow. You are not catching those fish on a drop shot directly underneath you at noon in 20 feet of clear
Especially
water.
up there in New Hampshire where you are, man, you guys have got a lot of clear
Yep.
water. I mean, that's a big thing. Um,
Not here.
yeah, not here. Uh, so Wyatt, when we probably should have done this before the managing fish, but let's say you're out there, you've done your mapping, you have found the fish. You found a school of fish. How much time do you spend on on a group of fish before you kind of eliminate those fish for a tournament and say, well, they're not big enough. I need to find something that is a little bit better than what this group of fish seems to be.
In my situation, well, especially just the kayak situation, period, you don't ever forget about those fish because if you need a limit, even though they may be smaller fish, you can always go back to them and, whether you only catch a couple out of the school or, wherever they're loaded up on a point or however, but if you can work at it and catch a couple of them just to help your odds getting that limit, I mean, you always have to have that on the back burner. I mean, even if they're not what you're looking for. So you can't just run across the lake all the time and, move to a new spot. So that's something that's really important and, keeping track of them, even on throughout the middle of the day. If they're not hitting on one thing, try it again. And whether it's different color, different bait, you gotta, use that to your advantage.
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes sometimes that group of 12-inch fish can make a difference in a bad day and a good day, especially in a tournament, especially in a tough tournament like what we've dealt with around here.
Yep, especially like Monroe or something.
Yeah, something like that place.
There's Wyatt, there's something that I actually got to do for the first time this spring. It was a kayak fishing trip, father, son, and it was peak smallmouth spawn and 2 feet of water. 2 feet of clear water, and we would sit over these fish for 25 minutes a piece over these beds, and I would find a pair, and I would catch a fish, and it was usually a 3.5, 4 pound smallmouth, and make sure I didn't move too much, put it right back. But that fish was not biting again in the next 30 minutes. So I would say, hey, come over here, cast right here. There's a 7-pound female. And so you've got the male and the female in the beds. And so I'd pull the small male off the bed, and then the larger female would get caught. And I mean, it was one of the best days. It was so cool. And I've heard about guides making fun of themselves, like, oh, I didn't mean to catch your fish. I'm just pulling the small ones off, But there is once you catch a few small ones, I always feel like there's a bigger one hanging around. It's like if they get bigger every catch, I might stay a little longer. If they get smaller, just heading out.
Yeah. So how much time do you put into that, Michael? Like when you're looking for clients, is there like, do you put a quality stamp on the fish, or are you just looking for maybe fish that will bite over, saying, well, there's a group of fish. I want to really put these guys on a group of 15-inch to 3-pound fish so that they're catching something of keeper size that is quality, or do you just kind of base it off, hey, this lake, this is kind of what is the norm for this body of water, and this is kind of what we're going to go after?
No, because it could be the biggest bass of their life. So I might jokingly say that's a good warm-up fish, or they're so excited, and it's like the first spot of the day. And I'll say, guys, I am so glad y'all have so much fun with these fish, but I have to tell you a secret. These are medium fish for this lake. They're like, what? Yeah, we're going to go try another spot. And so I kind of bring it around that way. I don't want to dumb it down because it's still, some of the biggest fish of their life, and they are there to catch a big fish. But some people they're happy to be catching fish. And
Oh, yeah,
so
for sure.
I may be more disappointed in a 3-pound bass where they would love to do that all day.
Mhm. Now, do you still? This is kind of a off brand or off topic question. So now that you've kind of switched to the boat, well, you've added the boat to your arsenal. Do you still have clients that are calling in and requesting the kayak side specifically based on what you've done
Absolutely.
in the past?
Yep.
That's
And
awesome, man.
I mean, I still have the fleet of Jackson boats that
Yep.
are, that I am going to take when, I actually have a family of 4. Every single time they tried to go out with me, we tried 3 or 4 times, and it was a torrential downpour or 40-mile-per-hour winds. It just never worked. So in the springtime, we are going out, and I even tried to say, hey, we can take the bass boat, and they're like, no. My wife wants to kayak. She wants to learn how to kayak fish. And so it's the kayak fishing has not gone away.
Awesome.
It's been the bass boat's been a really good tool for families with younger kids, to really just get beginners out there where you don't have to focus on maybe someone who's not that athletic, who doesn't want to learn how to kayak and fish in the same day. So it's been a great tool, but I was out on the river today. I was not in a bass boat. I was in a kayak. Now I was casting and blasting, I was duck hunting
Oh,
as
yeah.
well as walleye fishing, but the NAR is just so versatile on days like that, you can do that. But in the springtime, you have some of the ice that hasn't completely gone out yet. And the kayaks, I have to be in a kayak to fish for trout in April and early May. It's almost a little too dangerous to bring the bass boat out, especially to larger lakes where there could be pieces of ice floating around. Not to mention, you leave your kayak out and it gets 20 degrees in the end of April, no problem. You leave a bass boat out and
You
it
got some
gets
icy problems.
it's a little bit more expensive to repair some issues
Yeah,
on the
for
bass
sure.
boat. But again, it is a tool. Kayak fishing has brought me to where I am today, and I'm not going to forget it.
Yeah, and it's awesome that you've kind of got that niche built into TBC guides of kayak fishing. It's a different experience, I'm sure, for a lot of folks coming up and wanting to fish with you on the water. So, moving on to the next question. We've talked about managing fish. We've talked about finding fish. We've talked about looking for quality keepers. What are some of the things that go into just your overall day? Like, how do you manage yourself, Wyatt, while you're out on the water? Like, how do you know when it's time to go? How do you know, hey, I need to eat something. Hey, I haven't drank in 4 hours. I need to grab a quick drink. How do you manage that entire process throughout kayak fishing while you're trying to find these fish, manage these fish, and control the quality?
That's something as kayakers and kayak anglers in general, I've noticed a lot of guys that they kind of forget to take a second and have that snack or take that drink of water because you're so caught up in what you're doing. And well, I know of a guy that actually got sick basically because he was dehydrated in the water during a tournament. He was so focused on the fish. I mean, it was a 90-degree day and the humidity was terrible, and he just straight up got dehydrated. And when you're making those moves in the kayak, I mean, they're going to take a little while. You utilize that time to drink that bottle of water or eat your snack going to the next spot. That's usually my main focus. Anytime I'm moving, that's my key time to utilize that time, because in a kayak, time is everything. Whether it's making a move or just fishing an area. But yeah, definitely, it gets overlooked way too much, and it does create some safety issues, I think, for some that overlook it.
I mean, you can get distracted real easy. So, Michael, that's a really big question for you. I mean, not only are you managing your fish, managing quality, managing your boat, managing all these things and yourself, but you've got to be on the lookout for Tom and Betty that have come out and paid. Yeah.
It's the
I mean,
third bad cast. The third bad cast, whether you have forgotten to open the bail, you
mhm,
have casted into my hat, or you have hit the side of the boat with the lure, you are going to sit down, you're going to have water, you're going to have something to eat. It is snack
mhm.
time. And you're going to, and it's always, and people push and push and push. I don't want to sound sexist in this, but ladies, when you need to use the bathroom, you just got to tell us. There's the lake, the big lake that I fish. I have a relationship with the hotel there. I can pull that boat up anytime. We can use the bathroom that's at the pool house. And they're not shy about that, because the porta potty at the boat launch, let's be honest, it's used mostly by men, and you do not want to go to it. And sometimes your bad cast, you just really need to pee. It's a full bladder. It happened to me today. I was so miserable. I was, there were ducks flying around everywhere. I was like, I don't feel like shooting anything. And I was like, you know what, Mike, you need to go have a bathroom break. So yeah, you just gotta take care of yourself just a little bit.
Mm.
It's the blood sugar, it's the emptying of the bladder, and the rehydration.
No, for sure.
And it's the
For
straw hat.
sure.
The big straw hat is the lifesaver when you're fishing with other people. Because as
You have brought,
fishermen, we know what a good cast sounds like. We know what a
oh, yeah.
bad cast sounds like. When I hear a bad cast, all I do is tip my hat in front of my face. And I know that no hooks are going to go into this grill. They're going to go into the straw hat.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. Um, so we're kind of getting close to the hour here, but so we'll start with Wyatt again here. What are some of your plans as we kind of move towards 2024? I mean, we're creeping up on the last month of the year starts tomorrow. What are you looking forward to? What are your plans? What are you kind of like starting to break down for your kayak fishing for spring of 24?
I've been throwing around a lot of ideas. Obviously, um, still waiting on some schedules to drop to really confirm anything. Obviously, going to be continuing to fish some local grubby stuff just because of the flexibility. I got a couple of lakes close to home, and being the unique schedule that they have, it really fits into really anybody's schedule. Definitely go be hitting a few of them. USA Bassins, their schedule, it's I'm really excited for it, so I'll be hitting all those for sure. A few SIAC events here and there. They got a lot close to home this year, so I'll be hitting some of those. And I've really been thinking long and hard on it, but kind of want to hit some of the Bassmaster Kayak Series stuff this year. So
Awesome.
we'll see. Like I said, depending on some of the schedules it gets released yet, but definitely want to. Gunnersville is definitely top on the list this year to go back to. So
It's a beautiful place to go. Michael, your season never stops. Well, if the season never stops, you're actually in your downtime here for a few more weeks, getting to have a little bit of fun for Michael. What do you got? What's it looking like coming up for the big ice season, man? When you feel like you're going to start?
So I decided to take the plunge. I made too much money this year, so I needed to stay in the red for tax purposes.
I
So I
understand that.
decided to. Behind me, I have my ice live scope set up. So I'm going to take on lake trout this year. I'm going to learn how to teach myself and learn from others how to jig for lake trout on the bigger bodies of water in New Hampshire and Vermont. They're the more elusive fish. Bass under the ice. You just need some live minnows, and you need to know where to go. Pike.
Mhm.
I would love to push 20 pounds on the pike this year under the ice. Personally, but I really just want to have just more of a presence on the ice. I'm looking into one of those like really nice ice cabins, that has like a wood fire stove and everything. We need some really solid ice. But looking forward to next year, one of the things that my retail partner up here, Outdoor New England, we hooked up with one of the hotels on one of the lakes that I do a lot of trips on, and we want to get them kind of having their own fleet of Jackson kayaks. And there's a real opening in the hotel market around here of getting people to have their own small fleet of kayaks. One of the biggest things that I will say, having the bass boat, everything is in the boat. I put it in the water and I go. The kayaks, when I have over 3 or 4 people, it's a lot to unload. It's a lot of work.
Oh yeah.
It's a completely different experience. The kids groups, I love it because I make the kids do all the work. Parents are like, make my kid work. No problem. I will make them, carry a kayak. But there's so many hotels and riverfront properties and lakefront properties out here that need their own kayaks. And the thing that we are trying to do is let them see that, we will build out a fishing program at your resort with Jackson Kayak. And I have a couple other guys working for me this summer that I'm hoping to expand my business and put them in that role, and get them taking these small fishing trips on these small ponds and lakes with these hotels and cottages, all fishing out of a Jackson Kayak. So as much as I am looking forward to ice fishing season, there's no Jackson Kayaks I'm pulling around on the ice. So I'm still looking into 24 and how do I get more people into a Jackson?
Very good. I like it. Well, we're going to do one more thing here before you guys go. And I'm going to let you guys play a good game of rock, paper, scissors here real quick. And you decide who gets to go first. Right. Gosh. So, Michael, you're up first.
Okay.
Bring back the music. You guys hear the music? Isn't it classy?
It's
different.
Wyatt had rock. He won. Does that mean he goes first?
No, that means you go first.
Okay.
You lost. So five quick fire questions.
Oh.
Favorite fishing lure?
Oh, chatterbait.
Chatterbait. I like it. Lake you're least likely to fish ever again.
Ooh. Oh. Oh man, what was the name of that lake? Oh, I hated it. Oh, Lake Sunapee.
Guess I even remember that. Never heard of that place.
Sylvester Stallone. No, Steven Tyler has a house on Lake Sunapee.
Worst TV show fishing theme song.
TV show fishing theme song.
Yeah. You can say Road Trip Angler.
Oh, I don't watch a lot of fishing TV shows. Road Trip Angler, sure.
There you go. Yeah, so Jameson. Best fishing show on YouTube. What are you YouTubing these days?
Oh man. I like the Qualified Captain just because I'm a new power boat owner, and so I like to see what not to do. So I like Qualified Captain. It's not fishing, but it's boating.
There you go. There you have it. Last and final question. Goofiest thing that's ever happened to you on your way to the water? Goofiest encounter.
Oh, encounter?
Yeah.
These are tough.
These are tough. on the way to the water. I went back to my house 4 times. The first time I had a Garmin Striker 4, forgot the mount, and then forgot the head unit, then forgot the transducer, then forgot the battery. And that was my first experience with sonar.
Nice. All right. Wyatt, you're in the hot seat. Look, we're going to switch the music. We're going night driving. This one's called night driving. So we're going to start off with you. Favorite lure off the top of your head? Nico rig. Lake you're least likely to ever fish again?
Oh boy. There's a couple lakes I'd like to say. Man, I really don't know. That's tough. Really don't know. I
Okay.
going and seeing all lakes and going back to them just to,
For the rebound.
Yep.
Just for the rebound. All right. Now it's the $1 million question. The worst fishing TV show theme song.
I don't watch much fishing on TV. I do. Man.
It's okay to say Bill Dance.
Well, honestly, that was what I was thinking of. He's iconic.
You're not going to hurt Bill's feelings. He's not listening to this podcast, I can assure you.
That's exactly what I'm thinking of, but it's so iconic. It's great, but it's not necessarily the best theme song.
What are you watching on YouTube?
Scott Martin.
Scott Martin. All day, every day.
Yeah.
Goofiest encounter on your way to the lake?
Oh boy. A lot of y'all probably don't want to know some of the.
I mean, you've met us.
Yeah. I tell you what, that emergency bathroom break on the way to the lake, it is quite probably entertaining to some. But keep those details to myself.
We've all been there. We
Yep.
have all been there. I'd say emergency bathroom breaks are probably top 10 on most anglers to the lake embarrassing moments. I think you'd be hard pressed to find. We've got one, Christian. He says road trip anglers, his favorite fishing show theme song. He often plays it on loops before watching the videos.
Hey,
man.
we're still broadcasting, right, Chad? Can I tell?
Yeah, we're still broadcasting. Can I tell
a funny famous kayak fisherman bathroom story?
Absolutely.
All right, so I hope I don't get in trouble for this. This is gonna be funny, actually. And being that he spoke about Jackson Kayak in one of his last podcasts, I will get to speak about him. I was very excited to meet this gentleman on a lake in North Carolina. I picked up my trailer from On the Water Innovations, and there was a gentleman with a trailer also from On the Water Innovations who was going to fish with the guys from On the Water, and I was very excited to meet him, but apparently Chad Hoover had a very unfortunate taco or something, and we were on the lake all day long, waiting for him to come join us, and he never did. And like, I actually feel bad now that I actually went to go shake his hand while he's sitting in his truck. But yeah, he was very mum about it, but yeah, almost got to fish with Chad Hoover.
No comment. No comments moving forward.
Chad.
It's all right. So, as we close this show out for tonight, we'll start with Michael. Thank the people that you need to thank. Tell the people where to find more about TBC Guides and Michael Blatt on the socials.
Let's see. Instagram is the heavy hitter these days. I still haven't taken the TikTok plunge at TBC Guides and tbcguides.fish. There will be a lot of ice fishing content in the coming weeks after this weekend's rain. But yeah, we are still in the throes of hunting season and things like that. So stay tuned to all the fun stuff that's happening up here.
Yeah, absolutely. How about you, Mr. Wyatt? Thank the people that you want to thank, and obviously tell them where to find more about you on the social worlds.
As far as social media, I got Facebook, Wyatt Gard. I don't have a page. I've thought about starting one, so stay tuned for that one. Wyatt YFZ88 on Instagram and TikTok, Wiley_Wildman. And really like to thank Thunderhawk Lures. Them guys picked me up this year, and they really just treated me like family. They make some killer baits, and I am so beyond blessed to have them. And I actually worked their Black Friday sale with them and got to know everybody, the owner. They treated me it's just been really surreal for what they've done for me this year. And I got a discount code Wyatt10 if anybody wants to check them out and save a few bucks. Evolve Fishing, they make some killer rod sleeves. They're neoprene, practically hook resistant. They float. And then
Sign me up.
Jackson Kayak. I mean, they really show the sport, the love they need. I mean, there's very few companies as involved as Jackson, and that shows a lot about the company and the people and the family atmosphere and everything. So can't thank them enough.
No, awesome, man. It's been great having both of you dudes on the podcast tonight. I feel like we had a good round table discussion tonight. You guys crushed it out of the park as always. And I feel like hopefully somebody walked away learning a little bit of something tonight, or at least got a cool idea on something.
And you only said
but
live scope twice.
We only said live scope twice, so this
Crazy.
episode's not banned from YouTube. So I would honestly like to thank Jackson Kayak Orion Coolers. They make this thing possible. Dock Talk Orion podcast. It's been an amazing opportunity these last 2 years to bring these episodes to you guys. Then we've got to thank Z-Pro Lithium Batteries for everything that they do. They keep Zach and I and the Orion podcast powered with their lithium-powered units. Absolutely phenomenal. We haven't had a battery go to sleep. They've knocked it out of the park all year long. Evolve Rod Sleeves have just joined us for the JK Trail and the Orion podcast, so we're stoked to have them on board, as well as Cast King. Cast King has been the biggest eye opener in quality products I think I've had in a long time. So check those guys out, castking.com. And then lastly, Basco. Get you some Basco shirts. New shirts are getting ready to hit. 2024 drop is on the way. Chris has been working hard on some new swag for everybody. So check out Basco Fishing. And yeah, you're going to be pretty stoked on what you find. There's a little bit of something for everybody. You can thank me for the plainer clothes because I made Chris go back and put something a little more mellow in there for us guys that ain't necessarily so flashy, but if he flashes your gig, man, he's got that too. So yeah, thanks for watching. Join us in not this week, but next week we will be back. A new Orion podcast, a new Dock Talk. But until then, we will see you on the next one. Good night, everybody. It's crushed.